Linux is a multi-user system, and one of the skill set you should have once you get familiar with Linux is a user and group management. Managing users and group is very important to enforce a file permission, access controls, and audit users' activity in the system. In today's video, we'll look at the files and the commands to manage users and group. So let's deal with the managing users first, and then we'll jump into the groups. Linux manages user database and other information about the user inside etc passwd file. And in the early days of Linux, users' password were also saved into this file, but later they moved into SADO file. And the group information is saved under group file. So understanding these files are very important for managing users and group. Let's look into passwd file first. If you look at this file, there's a certain format that things are defined inside this file. And this line represents user Umesh and its information. So the format is username, password, UID, GUID, comment, home directory, and the cell type. So on this line, Umesh is the username. And like I said before, the password is moved to the SATA file, which we will look into later. So it's X. There is no password information here because this file was readable by everyone. So they moved password information to the SATA file, which is only readable by the root user. And 1000 is the user ID and 1000 is the group ID by default. We talked about this one in our previous video, which I will link on the top for your reference. So any user you create in the Linux after you install the system, it will start with the UID of 1000 by default. And this is the comment section where you can put users information like a full name, phone number, address, and etc. And this is the home directory of the user. And this is the default cell that user will get when he or she logs in. So if you do long listing of this file, you will see that this file is readable by everyone. And that is why they moved it to this file, which is only readable by user root and the SATA group. And if we read SATA file, so the first field is username, and this is user's hashed salted password, which I talked about in my previous video, and I'll also link that video on the top for your reference. This is the date of last password change. This is minimum required days between password changes, and this is maximum allowed days between password changes. And the sixth field is number of days in advance to display password expiration message. The seventh is empty here, but that defines number of days after password expiration to disable the account. Eighth is account expiration date, and the ninth is reserved. And if you want to change user password information, there's a command change. And if you do change -l username, it will list those information. So the last password change was January 2nd, 2022. Password expires never, and it was never inactive, and account never expires. And minimum number of days between password change is 0, so I can change it anytime. And maximum number of days between password change is this one. And number of days warning before password expires is 7. And if you need help about this command, you can do -h, and you can see how you can change the information. So if you do change -m1 and capital M90. So if you enter this command, what happens is the user password expires after 90 days from the last password change, and you should wait at least 1 day before you change the password. Permission is denied. So let's execute with sudo. And now if I do, so if you notice here, the password, it was never before. Now password expires after 90 days, and I should wait at least 1 day to change the password. And it said the password day is 90. Before it was 9999. And if I want to go back to the old setting, then what I can do is sudo says minimum days is 0 and maximum days is 9999 again, and for user Umesh. So it got back to the previous setting, password never expires, and the maximum days is 9999. So if you want to add new user to the system, you can actually edit this file. But instead of doing that, there are high-level commands which deal with updating those files for you. So to create and delete user, you can use user add and user del command to add users and delete users. But these commands are low-level commands and meant for system use only. For example, if you do user add guest and not provide any other options like creating home directory. It does not create a home directory for user, and you will have to do it manually, map the user to home directory and set the permission. So let's try this one. So if you do, so account guest is created, user ID is 1001, 1001 is a group ID. And if you do inside group file, then you will see the group account is being created. But the problem is if you list home directory, there is no home directory for guest. So if you do sudo user del guest, it will delete that user. So there is no group information for the guest, and there is no user information for the guest. And obviously there is no home directory. So user is gone. And if you do user add -c guest user, that's a comment, -d home directory guest, and then -m actually creates a home directory. And if you do guest, now it will create user with the home directory /home/guest. So if you do list home directory, now you have a guest user, which has the user guest as an owner and user group as the group owner. And if you search fastwd file again, then there's a guest information. And after the guest is created, you can do fastwd guest and hit enter to change the guest password. You could also do, in this command, you could also do -p here and supply the encrypted password. But instead of that, you can just create the user. After the user is created, you can do fastwd and guest to change the user's password. And if you need more information, user del -h and user add -h. And to delete, so user del guest, and if you do -r, it will remove its home directory as well. So all the information are gone. Now let's talk about other user-friendly tool, and those are designed for Linux users in a high level to manage user account and groups. And that command is add user, delete user, and user mod to modify the user information. So sudo add user guest. Now it will give you a little information about the user and ask for the password. So guest 123, for example. Guest 123, and now it is asking for the full name, so we can say guest user and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 work phone number. You can skip by pressing enter, and if this information is correct, we say yes, or default will enter. The user is created. Now if you go into this file, the guest account is created again, and it took 1001 UID and GUID. And similarly for the group, and also it creates a home directory. And you can use delete user command, del user guest. So this command will delete user guest and its primary group, but deleting a user without -remove home option, it will not delete the home directory. And it's up to the system admin or the root to decide what to do with the user's file. If they want to remove the files while the user is deleted, you can use this option, or you can simply remove the user account and then home directory will stay there. And you can do chown to change the ownership of the file and everything inside the file to root, and then move it to somewhere if you want to access those files later. Because what happens is if you do not do this and delete the user guest, and if you create another account, let's say guest 123 for another user, then it takes the same 1001 as a UID, and any files or directories that was owned by this guest, which was deleted, the new user will get the permission, because new user will get the same UID, and system defines file ownership and permission based on this UID, not the username. So it is very important for the system admin to change this ownership of home directory of deleted users. And of course, if you do not want those information to be saved, you can do delete user -remove home and guest. So it removes home directory and remove the users as well. But simply doing del user guest will not remove the home directory. Okay, let's create user one more time. Again, it took same user ID, new password, guest 123, guest 123. So let's not add all this information. So the user is created. if you want to change any information about guest, you can use user mod command for modify user. And if you do -c guest user, so it will update the comment section and user guest. Now instead of guest only, it has guest user information. And if you do user mod -l guest new space guest, that will change the username. Now it's a guest new, but your group information will remain the same. You can do sudo user mod -L guest new. Now if you do passwd file and see the guest new information, or actually shadow file, you see exclamation here, that means user is temporarily locked. And you can do sudo user mod -u guest new. So that will unlock the account and the exclamation is gone. Now user can log back in again. System admin does this if some employee is temporarily on vacation, want to lock the account and give access back when the employee is back. So let's change username to guest again from guest new. Okay, it is back to guest now. And you can use similar command to add a new group. Let's say the group of name is new group. So the new group is created and with a GUID of 1002. So if we do group information, you will see that guest has a GUID of 1001 and the new group that we created has 1002. And let's open another terminal and log in guest here. Guest 1, 2, 3. And if you supply command ID, it will display the user information. So when you create a user, by default, it creates the user group information with the same name and similar UID and GUID. So if you want to add user to another group, you can also use user mod command. Let's add some more group here, guest 1 and guest 2. So now we can try adding user to a different group. So we can use user mod to change user group information. So if you do -z and let's do guest 1 for guest user, and let's go back here, log out and log into guest again, guest 1, 2, 3. If you do ID, now you will see that the user has a new group added, guest 1, which we added here. So if we do it again and do guest 2 here, what happens is it will remove the old supplementary group guest 1 and add guest 2. So if we go back here, exit and switch to guest again and do ID. So 1001 is a primary group which remains here and it changed from guest 1 to guest 2. So if you want to add to a new group but also want to keep the existing group information, you can do -a append, keep that information and now add it to the supplementary group guest 2 as well. So now if we go to guest user and do ID, okay, and guest 1, because it was already guest 2 member. Guest 1, 2, 3 ID. Now user is associated with the guest 1 and guest 2. So it was member of guest 2 before, but we use -a option to append a new group and not delete the existing supplementary group. And by doing so, it was associated with the 2 new groups. One more thing, let's change the primary group of user. So let's delete the user from one of the group, and you can use sudo delete user guest from guest 1 group. And now if we log back here, it is removed from the guest 1 group. And if we do guest 2, now it is also removed from that guest 2 group as well. And if you do sudo user mod -g lowercase g and group name guest 1 for the user guest, so what happens is now it will change the primary group of the user. So it was guest 1001 before, Now it's a guest 1 1003 and guest 1 1003 is the primary group. And go back to the guest again. So when you create a new user, the home directory information and the file permission is derived from the file adduser.conf. And you can use this file to change the default settings when you create a user. For example, if you go inside this file and find directory mode. So this is the default permission of any new user's home directory. That's why the home directory is 755. And if you want to change it to sudo search directory mod and change it to 750, save. So now any user you create, sudo add user guest 2, they exist, guest 3, guest 3, guest 3. And now if you do long listing of home directory, the default home directory permission is set to 750. Now let's move into managing the group information. So we have guest, new group, guest 1, guest 2, and guest 3. And you can use sudo add group, new group 2 to add another group. So we have another group, new group 2, and you can do sudo del group, new group. Now that group is gone. Previously, we used usermod command to change user information and also change the group information, add to the supplementary group, or even change the primary group. And similarly, you can also use sudo add user, and the username is guest 1. So it will add guest 1 as a supplementary group and does not remove the existing group. Now we can see that by doing add user guest and guest 1, it added guest 1 as a supplementary group, and sudo del user guest 1 removes from the supplementary group. So you can use either usermod command or add user to change the user group information. And that is gone now. And there's also group modification command. So if you do sudo group mod -g, let's say 1007, and group name is new group 2. So what this will do is it will change the GUID of this group to 1007. So it got changed from 1006 to 1007. So group mod, modify group information, user mod, modify user information, and associate user with different groups and supplementary group. You can do -n, new group name, and change the name of this group too. So let's go back here. So this is guest. So by default, any new user that you create will not have the sudo permission. So guest cannot view SADO file. And obviously guest is not a sudo user. So what you can do is if you want to add guest as a sudo user, you can go to etc sudoers file and add user information here. So if you want to make guest as a sudo user, then you can do guest all. Now user guest is a sudo user, and it can now view the file. And if you remove this line again, sudo permission is gone. And now guest is not sudo user anymore. So let's add user guest to guest 1 group. And now let's log in one more time. So now user is part of guest 1 group. And if you want to give a whole group to the sudo permission, what you can do is you can go to same file again. and you can do percentage guest one all. So user guest is not a pseudo user, but group guest one and its member are pseudo users now. And now since guest user is also member of guest one, it is also pseudo user. And any member that you add to group guest one will be a pseudo user as well. It's a little bit risky, so let's remove this information from here so that nobody will be pseudo user. And the permission is removed now. And this is how you can manage users and a group in the system. And it is one of the basic skill sets any system admin should have, or if you want to let other people use your system and create a new account, that's how you can change and manage the permission. I hope this video was helpful to you. And if you have any comments and questions, please leave them in the comment box. Thank you for watching this video. Thanks for being with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.